What do you believe is the likelihood that every interviewer you speak with is gracious, kind, thoughtful, a good listener, attentive, and really wants to make sure that you have the best experience of your life in an interview? It's a low, low percentage. We're talking about, especially if we're looking at a virtual on-site or as we go back to regular on-sites, the chance if you're going to meet with 3, 4, or 5 people that everybody is going to be engaged, excited, and wanting to chat with you, it's a very low percentage. And even if we go on that positive assumption, positive intent, and we go in thinking everybody's going to be great, we all know the reality is we have to prepare for something different. So go scan YouTube, go do a Google search, and while there are a few videos that talk about personality types in an interview and what you might face, there's almost no data on that. What's the challenge there? It is assuming a static environment. So the static environment is we practice all these commonly asked questions. We practice open-ended questions. We actually practice with another person. We record ourselves. We take all these steps, and then we run into Bob. And Bob doesn't want to turn his camera on. Bob has notifications going off. Bob is cutting you off. Bob looks disinterested, almost upset, angry during the interview. Then what do? All of our answers and all of our prep and practice has really been thrown off. And it's because we failed to prepare, and myself as a YouTuber and other YouTubers have failed to prepare you for a bad interviewer. And so I have worked on this subject and talked about this subject a couple times, but what I haven't focused in on in this very short video today, I want to talk about the strategy. So how do we prepare for an interviewer who, we don't even have to call them bad, but they're just not engaged, they're not excited to be there. And for most interviewers, this is a job responsibility, not a volunteer item. They are not willingly going into these interviews and saying, wow, this is going to be the best day of my life, best experience to give this person the chance. That's just not the setup. So how do we get around this? How do we practice for this? How do we talk about what nobody's talking about? So the number one strategy is practicing, and the setup could be something like this. We want to practice this with a professional, with a friend, past, former colleague, significant other. We need to ask them to play characters. So we could have a few different characters in mind. Let's go to Sue. Sue is our cool interviewer. Sue has a great personality. She's very warm. She's very friendly, forthcoming with information, and she is actively listening and engaged in the process. So you'll have and want to go through that exercise of somebody like Sue. Now, let's take somebody not quite as good, like Jane. So with Jane, the way we want to treat Jane is Jane maybe is a little less forthcoming, maybe less smiley, a little bit harder to read. Maybe Jane isn't answering all your questions. She's just kind of sitting back. So how do we engage and adapt and adjust to somebody who is a little bit harder to read? That's our second practice person. And then our third practice person, let's go back to Bob. We're going to have our friend, significant other, etc. They are going to play the character of Bob and really push our buttons and frustrate us and get us off track. And really practicing with somebody like more of a Jane or a Bob is going to be incredibly impactful for what happens in the interview. Because if we are just, again, anticipating this static environment where our interviewer is always the same person and they're always going to be perfect, it's not going to work for your success. And this translates to all companies. But let's just talk about Google for a second, because that's where I spent the majority of my career recruiting. People know that Google has this really positive culture, and so therefore they're translating that into the interview experience. We work with a ton of Google clients, and what they tell us, especially in these virtual on-sites or on-site interviews, is at least one of the 4 or 5 or 3 people that they're speaking with is not a great interviewer. and this is a dream opportunity, and they come in and they get or face somebody like a Bob. So we need to be preparing and practicing for that, because all the prep and practice to get these answers perfect, then when we face Bob, it will completely fall apart. And I know that this is a short video. I really wanted to go unscripted and just talk about this item because it's coming up so consistently lately that we just need to have a strategy for how to overcome it. So again, in your practice, ask somebody, whether again, professional, friend, significant other, whoever you're working with, to be a little bit tougher on you, because that will help prepare you for success when you hit the real interviews. I really hope this helps. I know it's super high level, but we're missing it. We're not telling you about this stuff as YouTubers, and we need to prepare you for this item, because all the other stuff doesn't matter if you face Bob. I hope this helps. Thanks.